once again to Sustainable Scottsdale, the City of Scottsdale's Green Building Lecture Series Preview. My name is Doug Edwards. I'm your host, and normally I have a co-host with me, my brother Kevin, and partner. We're with the Edwards Design Group, a Scottsdale-based design-build company. Today we're going to talk about innovative green-built projects. And we're real fortunate to have a very special guest, a friend of mine, and a local luminary. Actually, he's more than local; he's a global luminary, as far as I'm concerned. He's one of the great proponents for green understanding, ecologically sensitive thinking, and thank you so much, Phil Alsop, architect.
My pleasure.
Phil is the past CEO of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. What a wonderful group that must have been.
It was.
To be working for.
It was a wonderful experience, that's for sure.
Phil is also a trustee with the Sonoran Institute, which is they're actually a regional organization.
Yes, basically, helping to create a much more sustainable, much more better preserved, Western living.
Right.
From, towns to the natural world.
Excellent. Well, I know they've been around for quite some time, and
they
they've done a lot of good work. They're a needed part of our community. Also, Phil is he's on the board of the Phoenix Green Chamber of Commerce, which
that's right.
Is a wonderful, relatively new group in town.
Yes, indeed.
It's kind of a networking and kind of a synergistic place where similar minds meet. And
it is, yeah. The idea to help businesses to understand some of the more nitty-gritty details about what it takes to become more sustainable, given the future that we're likely to face.
Right, we're likely to face.
Yes.
Well, and then most importantly, Phil is the co-founder of Transpolis Global. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Phil?
Yes. Transpolis Global is really a consulting firm that does a lot of work in the area of community development, green industrial development, and the focus of all of this is really around human habitats. We've not done a brilliant job with the way we build and design for ourselves by and large, and we're very concerned to work with organizations, cities, local communities, Native American tribes, for example, on restructuring and reconfiguring and refitting human habitats because of what it means to us as a species.
And the kind of philosophical approach to that is old world.
Some of it, yes.
Combined with modern technology and what have you, but still there's like the city center and right?
There is that even for rural communities, the sense of place, the sense of being that people experience. We look back on our own childhoods perhaps, and we remember the places we grew up. We remember a lot about them, how wonderful it was to be able to run up and down the streets, even if they were very small villages or small settlements. Mm-hmm. And much of that has gone today in favor of, planning and zoning for automobile convenience, and it's taken away the human factor. We've probably done a pretty good job at reducing our sense of community, which I believe is being looked at very, very closely by a lot of people. In fact, many people are yearning for it. Where did it go? What did we do? The
sense of community, yes. Everybody involved, there's the communication, the interaction between neighbors, and there's a lot of, it seems like there's a disconnect that's kind of propagated through modern time.
There is, yeah, and I think we have a number of issues as a society here and abroad that we're dealing with in terms of energy, public health, sense of community, how do we encourage new commerce, etc. But our built environment actually does a lot. They say, you are what you eat, but we also are where we live.
Right.
Where we live has a significant impact on us, our well-being. So that's why we do what we do.
Right. Well, that brings up the main topic, and that's innovative built projects. Mm-hmm. You just completed a couple of years ago complete and utter gutting renovation on your home.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little about the history, why, and
Sure.
your approach to that?
Yeah. My wife and I were always talking about how deadly suburbia had become. We moved down from Michigan for my job at the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, and we were looking for a house that was within biking distance of Taliesin West.
Excellent.
Some of the realtors that we worked with thought we were utterly nuts. They wanted to put us 20 miles out in a much, much larger house. But we said, no, we wanted to live on a street where children played. There were no gates, and it was kind of older, and we were only looking really for a smaller place. So we basically bought a house that I think that was built around 1984. Basically a builder's tract home. There must be at least 100,000 just like our original house in the valley. Slump brick and the air conditioner on the roof, probably around 1,700 square feet.
Completely energy efficient.
Absolutely. And we looked at it, we thought, well, we can do something with this. We were probably going to do a few things to restructure it. And then, as life happens, to everybody, my father passed away in England, and we were over at his funeral.
England? You're from England?
From England originally, yes. It's not a West Texas accent I have.
No, I was going to say maybe Florida.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
And you were talking about something very serious.
Oh, no. Dad had a very, very good sense of humor. In fact, his sense of humor was so good that on the afternoon of his funeral, we got a telephone call from the cat sitter informing us that the cat was swimming in the house, and there had been a flood, and the flood was in fact an overflowing toilet, been going for several days apparently. So we came back to a place that was literally soaked. It had wrecked the carpets, it had wrecked some furniture too, which we had to get redone. So we thought to ourselves, instead of just a modernization and a tweak here and there, why don't we take the opportunity to completely gut the place and start over? So what we did was to convert an ordinary 3-bedroom slump brick builder's tract home, 1,600 square feet, into an 1,800 square foot, we put a little bump on the back, 1,800 square foot, 2-bedroom open apartment. And our objective was to see what the art and the science of the possible could be when you take an existing house and totally restructure it without tearing it down and McMansionizing it into something that is totally inappropriate for the area and bigger than you'd ever need.
Right.
So that's what we did.
Yes, and I've been through that house, and it is extremely comfortable. I love the open floor plan.
Yeah.
The way that you related the spaces.
We did. We didn't have any. There are walls in the house, but the main area, the kitchen, dining, living area, study area, and the entrance area are all open.
Right. You took all the dividing walls out that were non-bearing.
We were very lucky in that we had 32-foot clear span trusses.
Right. Excellent.
So it meant that there were no load-bearing walls underneath at all. So we had that flexibility, and because we had such a large book collection, we had. We moved about 120 book boxes from Michigan down to this area, and we do a big library in economics, environmental sciences, architecture, history.
Doesn't surprise me.
Military histories too. So we now live in a library. The room dividers, the one between the dining room and the kitchen and the living room, is a 6-foot high by 13-foot long double-sided bookshelf that's made out of plywood, and it works.
It feels like a library. It's really comfortable sitting in your common space, in your kind of living room space, is really engaging. It's just a great house. Tell me, what did you do? What did you do with the walls? Now you had a slump block.
Slump block. It was really funny when we tore it apart. We were helped, by the way, by Habitat for Humanity, who came and did a fabulous job of removing many of the old equipment.
Ah, that's nice.
And
what a wonderful thing to do.
Well, yeah.
You could take it and throw it in a dumpster.
Yeah, or you could give it to Habitat for Humanity, and they would do most of the demolition, and you get to take the write-off, too.
How nice is that? Perfect.
So the financial thing wasn't the key part of it. They were just great people to work with. They were very careful. They tried to take as much as possible, even snipping wire from some of the old outlets, so that they could reuse things. So that was good to be part of, for sure. But the walls were uninsulated pretty much.
What was it? What were the components?
6 inches of steel reinforced concrete blocks, standard construction.
Right, 6-inch block.
6-inch block, yeah, 6 by 16 by 4.
Right.
On the inside were wooden furring strips, perfect food for termites as they climb up to the roof. Virtually no insulation between them, except on the north side it was the pink fiberglass. That was about it.
Really? So the rest of the perimeter walls were not insulated?
Not insulated much.
Just the north side?
Just the north side, yeah. Whoever built it had obviously lived in the northern climate.
Whoever
didn't seem to realize that the sun here. We live in a desert,
and the
guys.
north side is the side that gets the least amount of sun.
But we don't get any on that side. So that's what it was. We replaced all of that. We ended up putting expanded polystyrene, solid insulation against the inside face of the block.
Right.
Then we put 1 3/8-inch metal studs, on top of which was 5/8 drywall, and then in between the studs we put solid EPS insulation as well. So we gave ourselves a much better R value and also better fire protection too, because the 5/8 is a lot better anyway.
Oh yeah,
than the half-inch.
It only costs a little bit more, and
it was just better. It ended up with a much cleaner finish. It didn't wave as much, so there was much less mudding to do to smooth things out.
Right. Yeah, it pays for itself, and it really doesn't cost that much more. I know. When our houses, our new homes, we use 5/8. That's just standard.
Yeah.
We never ever use half-inch.
Yeah, this is pretty good.
Also, we just finished renovating my mom's house, and she had a little catastrophe as well.
That's right. Yeah, this was last year. Yeah.
Well, it was a couple of years ago. Now it took
yeah.
us a year to get all the insurance and everything else. But she had a fire in her attic, and it kind of evolved into a complete rebuild. And what we did was, she also had the slump block, and we never knew what was behind that drywall that was, as it turns out, glued to the slump block.
Oh yeah,
without furring strips.
That was a favorite too. Yeah.
And these are the hallmark homes that you say there's a sea of 100,000 plus homes or more in this valley.
That's right.
And hers is one of them. What we did was we on the outside of the house we added an inch. 2
inches.
Yeah, 2 inches of high density foam, but we use a 3 by 3.5-inch steel stud. So we put the foam up against the wall, and the exposed side of the foam, a high density foam, had a radiant barrier on it, and then there was an inch gap between that and the stucco. So the studs expanded beyond the foam, went beyond the foam. So we had this void in between, and we vented all on the bottom and vented all on the top as well, on the outside, the whole perimeter of the house.
Okay, so up to the eaves.
Yeah, right up to the eaves, and gosh, the house is performing so incredibly well.
Yeah. What do you know? What watts per square foot your is achieving right now?
Per square foot?
Yeah.
Our
to give an example, before the flood.
Yeah.
Not that flood, but the flood we had.
Yeah. The flood, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. We were burning around 2.1 watts per square foot in the summer.
Right.
Last summer, after we'd occupied the house, renovation, we were burning just about 0.8 watts per square foot.
Wow. So that's considerably.
So it's probably about a 60% reduction in energy consumption. We're all electric, so we can easily measure the kilowatt hours and the kilowatts flow through.
Well, my mom's house hasn't lived in it long enough to really give an answer to that. But I can tell you that at this point, as of last weekend. She hadn't yet turned on her air conditioning.
Yes,
We go into her house, it's 76 degrees, the ambient temperature, 76 degrees. I was getting cold in her house. She had 2 fans going on, and I actually was getting cold in her house. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It felt so good.
Doing that on the outside is, I think, a very effective way for a lot of homes, because not everybody is going to be faced with the catastrophe that we faced.
Right.
And I don't. The costs are going to vary depending on the house and what you want to do, but that is a very, very effective way of refitting a house to have a much, much smaller energy footprint.
Absolutely.
Which is what we need to get to anyway.
And so, what did you do up in your attic?
We used a half-pound sprayed foam.
Oh my!
On the underside of all of the roofs and the gable ends.
So on the top cord.
Yeah. And it's about 6 to 7 inches. And then on the outside of the roof, we put, as a covering, we took off the asphalt shingles,
right,
which are great for attracting heat,
yeah,
and put a standing seam metal roof with a very high albedo. It's very reflective. You can put your hand on it in the summer, in the full heat of the sun, and you don't burn yourself at all.
Fantastic.
So that's made a huge difference. The inside temperature, just for the heck of it, we put a thermometer in the upstairs attic space, and the temperature got up to about 78 degrees in the summer.
In the summer?
In the summer, and that's the space that the air conditioning ducts are in. So the ducts aren't working overtime to try to get cool air through. So it's a lot much more efficient that way. So for us, the art and the science of the possible seem to work. Are there some things we would have done differently? Yeah, we would have loved to have had a basement.
Oh yeah, that's difficult, especially in a retro.
It's definitely in a retro. We looked at it and we kept looking at it, but the one thing it did do was to force us to pare back on the things we really didn't need.
Right, right.
Because there's a limit to how much you can store. So.
Absolutely, it's so important.
Yeah.
Well, I know that your kitchen is absolutely beautiful, and I love the way it opens up to your dining area.
Yeah. Yeah, we flipped it. The kitchen originally was on the south face of the building, and by taking the walls out and flipping the kitchen to the back part on the sort of northern side of that space, it just opened things up remarkably.
Did you have to? Obviously, you'd have to jackhammer to get your drainage all over there.
Yeah, we did. We cut. There was a small trench out to one of the main drain points. And so we need to drain and plumb for that for the sink and the dishwasher as well.
Right.
But that was fairly straightforward because we have a kitchen island where the dishwasher and the sink are, and so the feed from that is from the garage end up and under. We used throughout PEX tubing.
Oh, you did?
For
PEX?
PEX, yeah.
Fantastic.
It's all compression jointed. They're rated to about 800 psi.
So you completely rebuilt all of your plumbing?
All the plumbing as well as all the electrics. We put a new panel on the outside because we wanted eventually to see whether we were going to put photovoltaics on the roof. But before doing that, we wanted to make sure the envelope was performing as best as it could.
Perfect.
Because you can, in theory, put photovoltaics on anything, but you're going to need a much bigger system if you have a very poorly performing envelope.
Right.
So get the envelope up to speed, like you did with your mom's place, for example. I would imagine if you did a calculation before your mom's fire, the amount of photovoltaic array that you would need to satisfy the electric needs of that house would be much bigger than what they are today.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's no doubt. I just know that my mom was getting $400 a month electric bills in the summertime, and she has a 1,360 square foot home.
Wow, so she would have been, wow.
That's how terrible. That house when you walked into that house, you felt hot even if the air conditioning was on full bore.
I can empathize, yeah, I can see.
You feel the heat coming from the walls
radiating
around the whole perimeter of the house.
Yeah.
So no matter where you were, you'd still be sweating, even if the thermometer or the thermostat showed 72 degrees or 76 degrees.
Well, the HVAC
wouldn't make any difference.
It must have been running 24/7.
It was pretty much
in the worst part of the year. Yeah.
Yep, it was incredibly inefficient, and my mom, the expense every month was a bit daunting for her.
Well, imagine what it must be like for people who don't have much in the way of financial resources.
Right.
We in the work we do outside the house, we see instances of lots of families who have got a choice. They've got to keep their very inefficient house cool and feed the kids. Well, if you're going to have a house that's not at 120 degrees inside, then where do the kids dine? At McDonald's again, that's where doing smart things with energy conservation can mean a great deal for people who are really trying to bring kids up on a very, very tight budget and give them access to better nutrition.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It seems to me, I mentioned this to you the other day when we were together, it just seems to me that if we could allocate or the federal government could guarantee loans so that the banks would loan monies to anybody who wanted to retrofit their house with tried and true to energy efficient techniques and materials, and put photovoltaics up on their roof.
Right.
They would actually be able to start saving their net monthly expense. It would stimulate the economy. It would bring jobs, and as well, we would have less demand on the fossil fuels that we're using right now to generate our electricity.
That's right, because right now, on a per capita basis, we're consuming, I think, about 13,000 kilowatt hours for every man, woman, and child in the United States.
13,000 compared to,
say, 13,000 compared to, say, Germany, which is no industrial backwater. They're at probably around 6,000.
6.
Yeah.
So they're using less than half.
Much less than half. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
There's lots of data.
And why is that?
I think it's just historically low prices for energy, perhaps. Since the 1973 oil embargo, some countries took that very seriously and put in place programs rather similar to what you're just suggesting. And they are way ahead of us in terms of their the smallness of their footprint by comparison to ours.
Right.
We're at, in terms of total energy consumption for every man, woman, and child, we're at about 8.3 tons of oil equivalent energy for every man and per woman and child each year. And Australia, for example. Yeah, Australia, which is very spread out, pioneered country, very much like ours. They're down at around 6. So if we did something to encourage people to retrofit or refit or improve their own personal habitats, even if they didn't put photovoltaics on it, would make a huge difference in terms of the demand for electric power from big power stations.
Right.
And it would potentially put a lot more money, disposable income in their pockets to spend on better nutrition or saving up for a vacation with the kids and
Right.
Well,
it's one thing to go out and get a loan, which would be maybe a short term, and then compared to a long term loan. If you could get a 30-year, this is what needs to be guaranteed, a 30-year second mortgage that would take care of these retrofits to bring the standards much higher up. That in itself would be net less, or at least be somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think if you look at the cost of building any kind of power station, whether it's all photovoltaic or oil or nuclear, gas, whatever it is, it's an expensive proposition.
Absolutely.
Very expensive proposition. And I think the calculus would have to be, what is the cost of that 30-year retrofit program versus building a new power station every 5 and 10 years to keep up with demand.
Is that what it is, Phil?
Some of it, yeah. I mean, some of these programs are. We've been consuming that tonnage of oil equivalent energy for quite some time, but a lot of the power plants are reaching. They all reach the end of their useful life when it's either serious maintenance or replacement. And I think one of the big questions then becomes, well, how do we replace it? Do we continue to replace them and add more power stations to satisfy demand? Or do we encourage people to reduce their demand en masse to bring down the need for those?
It's a simple answer, isn't it?
Yeah. Simple answer is, yeah, it makes sense.
Let's reduce things, right.
If the more control you have on power close to you, the more secure in the aggregate I believe we are as a nation.
Absolutely. It's so important. Boy, that is probably the most important topic. Mm-hmm. I'd love to talk more about that. Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Okay.
You talked before we end this. Yeah. I wanted to bring up that bell curve that you talked about at the Green Stocks Expo.
Yeah, we have an economy where everyone's exhorting everyone to grow the economy, grow ourselves out of a problem, and I guess the concern I have, and it's shared not just by you and me and others, many others, is that when we have an infinite growth curve in terms of production or consumption or population growth even,
right.
And we have a bell curve of resources, which is discovery, production, and then decline.
Right.
When those two intersect, I think we have a problem.
It would seem so. And when do you project that intersection?
Well, I think the intersection we're beginning to touch right now. We're beginning
now.
Right. I believe we are. I think, and it doesn't happen overnight. I believe we've probably got a window where things will be a little chaotic, a little bit more expensive, and I think my great concern for us and our children and their children is, we've probably got a choice. We can go along as we are and be forced to make a change which may be very, very unpalatable, or we can design ourselves into a much more sustainable future, which is, I think, a more responsible thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's always best to think about things before you jump.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Or before you're thrown off the cliff.
That's right.
Like
and
it,
if we're going to jump, is the water deep enough?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Phil. Really appreciate you coming here and speaking with the community about all these thought-provoking ideas. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. I really enjoy your company. And
it's always a pleasure, Doug, truly.
Right on. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Remember to reduce, reuse, recycle, and we'll see you till then. Bye-bye.